A long time ago, when I first started dating my girlfriend, at the time, now she's my ex-wife, they lived in these certain apartments that was known for several hauntings. Her family lived on a top-tier apartment, while one of the uncles lived underneath them. The dude was considered hardcore at the time. He was a real big gangster, but had a wife and kids. In the living room, he had a couple of parakeets and a drum set. The parakeets would sometimes be noisy, even at night. But in the middle of a few nights when all was quiet, the drums would start playing. Being the hardcore guy he was, he would quietly whisper to his wife to go check it out. She would say that she was afraid and didn't want to go. He would say that he would go and that he would be right behind her. His wife would slowly get out of bed and walk to the bedroom door. The drum set was still playing this entire time. She slowly opens the bedroom door and the drum set would immediately stop playing. She saw nothing. She would close the door and come back to bed. A few minutes later, the drum set would start playing again. Like usual, he would tell his wife to go look, and again the playing would stop. A few days later, he sold the drum set and moved out. More stories about that apartment. It was rumored that before they had lived there was an older Hmong couple living there. The lady wore a silver bracelet on her left wrist. One day, she got really sick. Sometimes the water in the bathtub would start running. If nobody went to turn it off, the tub would overflow. It would just be cold water, never warm or hot. Sometimes late at night, while they were sleeping, they can hear the sounds of pots and pans and dishes from the kitchen. When the old man would get up, he would see nothing and the sound would stop. One night, it was a full moon out. The bedroom curtain wasn't closed all the way. The old man couldn't sleep because the moonlight was shining into the bedroom. He went up to close the curtains, but right before he closed the curtains, he saw something outside. He slowly peeked through the gap and saw a tiger walking outside. He thought that it was strange. He tried to get a better look, but the tiger turned around and walked behind a big tree. A few nights later, he decided that he was going to get a better look. Since it was a two-bedroom apartment, he had his relatives hide in the other bedroom while he and his sick old lady slept in their room. That night, late at night, the tiger came around again. The relatives said that the tiger was a tiger all right, but on the left front paw there was a silver bracelet. From the bracelet forward, it was still a human hand. A few weeks later, the old lady passed away, and the tiger never came back. On the same row of apartments where my ex-wife's family used to live were their aunt and uncles. This uncle had his mom living with them at the same time as well. Before I started dating my girlfriend at the time, the mother was doing weird things. She never became sick or anything. Sometimes in broad daylight, she'll be sitting on her stool and she'll open her mouth and out will come out her tongue. Her tongue was so long that it would actually reach or almost reach the floor, and she'll start panting like a dog. The aunt would yell at her, asking if she was embarrassed to be acting that way. Once the aunt said that, the grandma would snap out of it and reel in her tongue again. Every once in a while or so, the grandma would complain of pain around the area of her behind. They would take her to the bathroom and check it out. It turns out that she was starting to grow a snub of a tail. They would curse at the tail and spit on it. The snub would start shrinking and go away. Later times, they would take her to the hospital just in case anything was abnormal. The doctors would see the snub and have no explanation to what it is. They would just tell her to go home and do whatever spiritual things that Hmong people do. Wow, great help doctors are, huh? The doctors were well aware of the Hmong culture. So one night, they all decided to call up a shaman. The shaman already knew that there was something bugging the grandma and was ready to take her with it. They did jingle bells that night. I don't know what kind it was, but it was the one that you had to do at night. Anyways, almost immediately after the shaman started his trance, he grabbed for his shaman sword and started pointing it around. Everybody who was there had to move out of the way because nobody knew when the shaman was about to strike. He pointed around while one person held him at the waist for balance. He pointed his blade around high and low and then aimed it towards a corner of the living room. Instantly, he threw the shaman sword at the corner and hit something. Blood sprayed from out of nowhere. The thing ran on the ceiling and out the front door, leaving behind a blood trail gushing behind it. The people around chased after the thing and found that the trail went up the outside wall to the roof. They all looked up and saw nothing. Meanwhile, inside, the shaman finished his trance. Later at night, the aunt had a dream. The thing came as a dark figure and taunted the aunt. It would say things like how they couldn't kill it even if they wanted to, and that while they all ran outside and looked up the roof, the thing was also staring back at them. I never really did know what the outcome of the whole thing was because my girlfriend's family moved away from the apartments. Interested in sharing your stories? Submit them to HmongChronicles@gmail.com or in the description below. Here is the next story. Thank you. Later on, I had married my ex-wife at the time. We lived in this small apartment, so we were really only used to coming home to sleep and, of course, to store our things. Anyways, we used to visit her grandparents at the time. She had an aunt, the youngest daughter, who was a few years older than my wife. My brother and our nephew knew her too. One day, the wife and I showed up at the grandparents' house. My brother and our nephew decided to show up as well. They were planning to spend the night at our place for the weekend. It was getting late and we were all getting bored, so the aunt says, "Hey, can we all play the Ouija board?" We all agreed to try it and turn off the TV. With the lights out and everything, only a few people were playing. Most were still skeptical and didn't want to play. I think at the time it was just the aunt, her friend, and my nephew. They started playing and were having fun. The group started to ask questions of people who weren't even playing. Eventually, they got to me and asked it what my birthday was. Lo and behold, they got it right. I was starting to get intrigued and asked what my driver's license number was, and the Ouija board also got it right as well. The spirit that they talked to that night said that it was a boy who had drowned when the apartment complex still had a pool. He said he was having fun and that there were other spirits as well. It got later and they wanted to stop playing, so they told the boy that they had to go. They all said goodbye, including the boy, and the pointer just stopped, meaning the boy had left. Everybody went home. The next day, we went over again, including my brother and nephew. All the friends wanted to play again. The aunt whipped out the Ouija board again and called the little boy back. They started talking and asked more about the boy. They learned more, but this time, they learned that the other spirits the boy was talking about included good spirits and bad spirits. He said that there was one bad spirit that would bully all the other spirits. Nothing else eventful happened. The third day, we all played, including me. So this time, it was the aunt, me, my nephew, and the aunt's friend. It may have included others too, but I forgot. We talked to the boy first. He was answering and conversing with us, when all of a sudden, the pointer just stopped in the middle of an answer. A few minutes passed by, with no movement in the pointer at all. Then it started to move again. We asked if it was the little boy. No, it said. This time, it was a new spirit, someone different. We started to ask who it was, but the thing just wouldn't tell us. Finally, we asked if it was a good or bad spirit. It confirmed that it was a bad spirit. It was the spirit of the one that was bullying all the other spirits. It had heard the conversation the previous night. The conversation quickly got out of hand and everybody wanted to stop. One by one, we told it that we were going to stop, and it started to let each of us quit one at a time. I was the first one to quit. Finally, in the end, it was just the aunt, her friend, and my nephew. The spirit didn't want to stop because it had liked my nephew's hair. My nephew had naturally curly hair. The three kept on trying to convince it to let them go. After literally an hour or so, the spirit finally let them quit. And that wasn't even the freaky part. The freaky part was this. A few days later, we were talking about the board and told the grandparents what had happened. The grandmother had said, "Oh, is that so?" And then she started. "No wonder the last week or so, some weird things have been happening." She said at night when the aunt was out, the grandparents slept in one bedroom while the aunt slept in another. They could hear somebody knocking on their bedroom door. They thought it was the aunt coming back from wherever she was and just knocking. They would open the door and find nobody there. That would happen almost every night. Well, after learning about the board and what happened that night, the grandmother decided to throw the board away. She waited until the aunt went to school and went into the aunt's bedroom, took the board and threw it away at the dumpster. Later that evening, when the aunt's friend came over to their apartment again, the aunt went back to her room and got the board out. The grandmother saw the board and questioned the aunt. "Hey, did you go and take the board out from the dumpster? I already threw it away this morning when you went to school." The aunt replied, "No, it's always in my closet." The grandmother yelled at the aunt. The aunt finally just gave it away to one of her friends. After that, there was no more knocking on the doors or weird things happening. One of my ex-coworkers, who is a really big Christian believer, did not believe in the spiritual world. That was until their church had to burn some Ouija boards. He said that when they set fire to the boards, they actually screamed. The boards were screaming in agony. He said that you can't just throw the boards away. They'll always find a way to come back, whether it's on its own or by someone else picking it up and returning it. So for their church, they have an annual burning of Ouija boards. He also said that the cardboard ones, the one that you buy, are bad, but not as bad as the actual fancy ones made out of wood. He said that those wooden ones cause problems for the church members. After my ex-mother-in-law heard about the Ouija board causing strange things at the grandparents' place, she told everybody to stop playing with the things that we don't understand. She said recently, about a month or two before, one of her close nephews had just passed away. Here's what happened. Just 2 months before, a group of teenage girls were playing the Ouija board. Well, what do most people who play the Ouija board do? They challenge its validity, right? A couple of girls were asking the spirit to do something to prove if it really did exist. All of a sudden, one of the girls' eyes glowed red and her hair started to stand up. She asked a question in a deep and evil voice. She questioned the group if they believe in the spirit now. Everyone freaked out and just quit right then and there. Maybe it was a dumb thing to do. They probably should have asked it to go away first. Anyways, the girl turned back to normal after they quit playing. She said that she doesn't remember a thing though. A couple of days later, strange things started to happen, but mostly with the girl. Every once in a while, she would start talking in that evil voice. The family then decided to call a shaman. They did a few things to separate the spirit from the girl, which seemed to work. She never did get possessed again. However, later on, they realized that the spirit had gone and possessed one of the other people who were playing the Ouija board. It happened to be a relative, but this time, it was a guy. He didn't have the glowing red eyes nor the deep evil voice. However, he did keep himself secluded for long periods of time and self-inflict scars on his arms. The guy would keep up this behavior for the next month without the rest of the family really knowing, besides seeing the unexplained cuts on his arms. One day though, one of the relatives had a Hmong party. The rest of the relatives noticed something different about him. They asked him what was wrong, and he told them that he doesn't know, but he said that there are periods of time where he could see that he really wasn't himself. He said sometimes he would go into his room and doesn't remember a thing. He would then find himself with scratches on his arms. For one reason or another, one of the relatives put two and two together and they figured that it may have been related to the Ouija board. The family finally decided to call up a shaman and try to separate the spirit from the guy. The problem was that they didn't do it quick enough. I believe it may have just been a few days before they were going to have the shaman come over. They went to a close cousin's house. The first thing that guy did was go into the cousin's bedroom and close the door. The cousin wasn't there at the time. The family were all in the living room and didn't really notice him going into the bedroom and closing the door. A few minutes passed by and bang! They heard a gunshot from the bedroom. They all ran to the bedroom and opened the door. The guy had put a gun to his chin and blew his head off. He left a note saying that he did not want to be tortured anymore. A couple of years later, after the Ouija board incident, my wife at the time was about 4 months pregnant with our first son. I had started working for our landlord as a maintenance person at the time. We were to move into this small 24-unit apartment complex, and I was to be the manager there. Because of school and work, we couldn't move in during the day, so for those reasons, whenever we moved in, it would always be at nighttime. Well, one night, my wife and I moved in with the help of her younger sisters. My electricity was turned on at the outside breaker, but not turned on at the inside breakers yet. The first order of business is to get some lights. I went into the apartment, which was on the second floor, with a flashlight. The circuit breakers are on the bedroom wall at the double line. I turned on the main breaker and turned on all the lights in the apartment. There are two windows, one at the start of the curved red line and one at the end of the straight red line. The windows both have security bars on the outside, even though it's on the second level. Anyways, we moved in that night and slept there on the first night. Using the restroom, however, I would notice that there exists the smell of cigarette smoke in it. Neither of us smoked, so I figured the smell came from the tenants below who probably smoke in the bathroom. The first night went uneventful. The second night was different. My wife was sitting on the sofa and watching TV. The TV was about where the front door is, but halfway to where the bedroom is. I went into the bedroom and changed for a shower. I am never comfortable in a new place until about a week or so later, so I went into the shower with the restroom door open. As I am shampooing my hair, my wife calls out my name. I answered by saying, "What?" She didn't say anything else, and neither did I. After I finished showering, I came out to confront her. I was already kind of mad because she called out to me and didn't say anything else. I asked her why did she say that, and she just said, "Oh, it's nothing." It wasn't like her to do that, so I kept on pressing her. At first, she said that it was nothing. And again, I kept on pressing her. I showed her that I was annoyed by her calling out to me and then not saying anything important. Then she said, "I think we should go sleep at Mom's." I didn't think of anything, but we just grabbed our blankets and pillows and left. On the drive over to the in-laws, I asked her again why she did that. I told her that I wanted her to know that it wasn't like her to do that. She had never done anything like that before. She finally told me what she experienced. She said that while she was watching TV, out of the corner of her eyes, she saw a white figure going from the bathroom to the bedroom. She thought that it was me, but wasn't too sure. That's why she called out to me. When I answered from the bathroom, she knew it wasn't me, but she didn't want to startle me, so she didn't tell me. That night, we spent the night at the in-laws. The next day, after school and work, we came back with a whole bunch of us to pick up a change of clothes. On the way in, I saw something strange. My mini stereo at the time had a built-in alarm which turns on the radio or tape or CD when it was the time. However, there was an LED display that read, "Wake up," which would light up if you set the alarm. Anyways, on the way in, I saw that light blinking. It normally only blinks when the alarm is activated, meaning that the time was set. In this case, the alarm wasn't on, and I just found it strange. What we found that day was very strange. When we went to pick up some change of clothes, we found an oily trail of footprints. As we followed the footprints, it was almost as if it walked straight into the wall and out the other side. My hypothesis is that whoever it was hid something in that breaker box and died before they could take it out. When I went to mess with it the first night, it probably thought I took it out and came back to see if it was still there. And by the way, the footprints were huge. They were shoe prints, actually. They were larger than my nephew's shoes, and he wore a size 11. The prints were as if someone had stepped into an oily old parking spot and then walked on the carpet. I told my landlord about it, and that very Friday night, we moved out. However, things really didn't end there. More will be told in part 2.